So if any of you lucky folk got to play Trials this weekend, you would have noticed one build that dominated and made an appearance disproportionately to any of the other weeks. I'm not exactly sure what made Graviton Forfeit so popular this late in the season, given that it hasn't had any recent changes, but by God was the exotic being shoved into the back of my throat every single match. So I had to try it myself, and bring the breakdown of this build to you guys. Now I know what you guys are going to say. What's the purpose of this video? Surely the build is just to put on Graviton Forfeit, and there's not much more to it than that, right? Well actually, after playing with it this weekend, I realised myself and definitely others do not understand certain key components of the build. You need to realise what bonuses are provided with the build so you aren't left crouch walking around the map. Let's go over what we're going to cover today. The first thing I want to cover today is radar. What triggers radar ping while invisible? What cancels invisibility? And what can you get away with? The second important thing to cover here is, which Nightstalker tree should I be using with this build, especially for trials? The third is, what stat bonuses are provided by this build, and therefore what stat distribution should I be running? So the Destiny radar is a complex entity. Even after 7 years of playing this game, I still don't know all the ins and outs of it, especially when it comes to invisibility. So I did some research just for you guys, and I found out some things that honestly surprised me. You can be off radar while sprinting. Yep, I'm not kidding guys, only the initial sprint activation causes a ping on the radar. So find a sweet spot at the start of a trials round to activate your invisibility, and start sprinting early to get into a good position. Walking, but not sprinting, while invisible does not produce any radar pings. So when you are in the close proximity of enemies, which you can determine by looking at your own radar, I would try and avoid sprinting at that point. Try and walk. Walking with this build is actually a very efficient way to move, because the stat bonuses provided by this build, while invisible, mean that you are always at 10 mobility. And while mobility doesn't increase maximum sprint speed, it does increase walking and strafing speed, so bot walking around is a legitimate tactic with this build. Getting within 5 meters of your opponent actually puts you on their radar regardless of being invisible or not. So don't dilly-dally too much when you're right on top of an opponent. Try and make a play. When invisibility ends, you generally give off a radar ping to your opponents. However, if you are crouch walking or crouching stationarily, then you will not give off a radar ping for up to 15 seconds after invisibility ends. So keep an eye out on your invisibility timer at the bottom left of your screen. Finally, your initial jump does not trigger radar. Only the second jump, i.e. your class ability jump, will trigger radar. So take advantage of the baby jump to crouch onto some small ledges for some great positions. Only shooting your gun or throwing a grenade or an ability will cancel your invisibility, so take advantage of your ADS, take a few extra seconds to line up that shot, especially if you feel like the opponent isn't looking at you. Now to understand what Nightstalker build we should be using, it's important to know what Graviton Forfeit actually does. Graviton's main perk, Vanishing Shadow, increases the duration of any invisibility effects. While invisible, it increases melee recharge, weapons reload faster, and recovery is greatly increased. Now let's look at the Nightstalker builds from an invisibility duration and uptime perspective. For top tree, Vanishing Step, which activates when you dodge, goes up from 6 seconds of invisibility time to 8 seconds. Now with 100 mobility, your dodge is up every 18 seconds, so your invisibility uptime is less than 50% here, not counting any perks or mods that impact dodge cooldown. For bottom tree with smoke, you go from 8 seconds of invisibility to a whole 11 seconds. Now with 100 melee energy, my base smoke cooldown is 29 seconds. However, here's where Graviton Forfeit's exotic perk comes into play even more. If you don't break invisibility and remain invisible for the entire 11 seconds, with tier 10 strength, you actually get your smoke back in 11 seconds with Graviton Forfeit, so you have 100% uptime for invisibility. Now, the recharge rate for your melee energy while invisible with Graviton Forfeit is meant to get better with more enemies around you, but even when I was on my own, I was getting the 11 seconds cooldown at tier 10. For middle tree Spectral, flawless execution goes from 10 seconds to a whopping 16 seconds with Graviton. However, because I want this build to help with threes game modes and trials specifically, I'd rather have a build that lets me go invisible before securing a kill. So for me, the overwhelming winner here with the highest invisibility uptime is bottom tree Nightstalker. Another additional benefit is that because the invisibility is tied to the smoke, you can chuck this at your teammates' feet as well as yourself and make them go invisible, which is ridiculous at the start of a Trials round. Now moving on. Bottom tree Nightstalker also provides a buff called Heart of the Pack, which lasts for a whopping 20 seconds after first going invisible. It provides a ginormous 34 resilience, 34 mobility, and 34 recovery with each stack, and it can stack for up to 3 times. Now in Trials, going beyond 1 stack was rare, but because it lasts for 20 seconds and my smoke cooldown was anywhere between 11 and 20 seconds, depending on how early I broke invisibility, I practically had constant Heart of the Pack buff when alive. As a result, an ideal build would be 7 mobility, 7 recovery, 10 strength. Contrary to my initial thoughts, having 10 mobility and 10 recovery was not necessary, as Heart of the Pack was nearly always up even if invisibility wasn't, given that it had a longer duration. Now I know some of you will say, Cool Guys said Graviton Forfeit provides a flat 9.5 recovery while invisible, regardless of base stat, so why do I need recovery at all? Well, the times I needed the recovery was when I was between 2 opponents in an engagement, and my invisibility had already broken, so having some recovery is going to be very useful. Heart of the Pack also provides plus 30 reload speed, which is nearly like Outlaw, and plus 30 handling, which is better than Quick Charge. Not only does this build give you insane invisibility uptime, a quasi 10-10-10 build at all times, but it also gives you Dragon Shadow level handling. Guys, this is an S tier exotic for PvP. Do not sleep on it. It's not just Stompies or Bust for Hunters. Graviton Forfeit is amazing. All this is before Void 3.0. I'm honestly terrified how good this may become come Witch Queen. So guys, if you enjoyed what I talked about today, please make sure to like the video, and please make sure to subscribe to my channel for more builds and guides, especially with the new expansion on the horizon. Peace out.